This is the Stone Glacier Chilkoot 0 degree bag. I've spent over 70 nights in this sleeping bag, and I'm going to tell you why I absolutely love it. In my experience, a warm sleep system is the difference between an enjoyable trip and a miserable one. And the main thing that'll keep you warm is loft in your sleeping bag. But there's a lot more you need to know than just fill power. So let me break a couple things down for you. Fill power represents the amount of space, or loft, that 1 ounce of down fills up. Fill weight is the amount of actual down in the sleeping bag. So those two are very important to differentiate. You want a high fill power for a packable and lighter weight product, but you also need a high fill weight to make sure that there's enough down in the product to give you the loft that you need. You also want to look for a goose down product, because goose down is a larger feather and it's going to be more durable over time. And one of the last things that you should always look for is proper baffling. That means the seams on the fabric don't directly connect from the outer fabric to the inner fabric. There's a third piece of fabric in there. That way your down isn't being compressed and you don't get those cold spots in between. That also keeps the down in the position that it needs to be in, so you don't have cold spots over time from shifting down. The Chilkoot 0 degree has goose down, 850 plus fill, and 29.1 ounces of fill weight. This is on the higher end for a 0 degree bag, but that's not what really makes this bag stand out to me. What's special about this bag is that every feature works in conjunction to actually create a real life warm sleeping bag. If you go to their website, there's all sorts of graphics about their down treatment and their material weaving process, and it's not just a sales pitch. This bag truly does perform. I think the worst conditions I've been in were on a mountain goat hunt in Alaska. It was that type of wet cold that just cuts through anything. 32 to 40 degrees and torrential downpour. After multiple nights getting into the bag with wet socks and leaving it in a condensating tent all day, I never had a night where I was uncomfortable from the cold.
Camera's drying out. I'm trying to dry out. It's nasty out there.
Our hunter and guide weren't so lucky. They both woke up in about an inch of water around their sleeping pad. That's when properly treated down can be the difference between an inconvenience and a serious problem. When you're out there, you genuinely rely on your sleeping bag for safety, as well as comfort. If it gets wet and never dries, you are in trouble. Now, obviously, all of my nights in the sleeping bag were not that nasty, but I have used it extensively in a lot of different conditions, and I've never woken up cold because of the sleeping bag. So, staying warm is important, but when you talk about a good night's rest, you also need comfort. The problem is, typically you're kind of balancing that line between warmth and comfort. A lot of times the warmest sleeping bag is also going to be the tightest sleeping bag. The more space you have, the more opportunity you have for heat to escape. It's kind of a fine line you have to walk, because if you're in a tight little mummy sack, you're not going to be comfortable no matter how warm you are, and you just won't sleep well. I think Stone Glacier really nailed their sizing on this bag. I know a lot of guys that are a lot bigger than me that use this bag, and they're totally happy with it. Very comfortable. They say they have plenty of shoulder space, and that shoulder space carries down far enough that you're able to roll over. You can put your knees up, sleep on your side. And then one of the most important things, I think, is that the inner fabric is actually smaller than the outer fabric. So you've got your inner shell and your outer shell. And when you're pushed tight against your inner shell, especially I notice it in the foot box, you can have your feet spread as far apart as they'll go. The outer shell is bigger, so you'll still maintain loft, even though you're pushing up against the inner shell and pushing tight against the bag. You're not actually compressing that down. That's a really big deal. I've slept in bags where, you know, if your knee's pushing out, there'd just be a cold spot there immediately because it's compressing that down against the outer fabric. Moving on, the zipper works great. The fabric isn't too loud or stiff or crunchy, and the fabric actually breathes. So this is something that I haven't seen talked about in sleeping bags a whole lot, but in my opinion, a breathable sleeping bag is important, because I've slept in bags before where it feels like you're in a trash bag and you're just kind of stuck in there, you're getting all sweaty, and even though you're warm, you're not comfortable, you're not getting a good night's rest. So I've hopped in my sleeping bag multiple times with damp base layers, wet socks, and if you open the bottom of the zipper just a bit, the fabric will pull that moisture away from you a lot more than certain sleeping bags that I've slept in before. Now, it's not actually breathable, right? You can't be moving in this sleeping bag and expect it to wick moisture, but you will dry out with wet base layers. Every morning that I've woken up, I've been pretty dang close to dry. So that's a big deal for me. I don't like sleeping in a trash bag, even if it is a little warmer. I'll take breathability over that kind of claustrophobic feel. And then I think the last thing I want to cover is the hood. It's got good loft, just like the rest of the bag. One thing that is unique is it's got a magnet that closes around your neck. So that keeps the heat in, but then if you need to get out of your bag quickly, you can just push that magnet as opposed to having to try and find your little push button there and get your string loose or find a zipper or something. It makes you feel a little less trapped, which I appreciate. When you do tighten the hood all the way down, I've found that the position of the breathing hole is in a good spot. If that fabric's too close to your mouth, it'll condensate, create ice on a cold night, and then drip back into your face. That's no fun. Haven't had that issue with this bag. Overall, I think the features of the sleeping bag, I would say they're not noticeable, which is a good thing. So it's the kind of bag where you use it, it works great, you don't notice all these little features, but then when you really pick apart why it's great, you can look at all these different details that Stone Glacier put in, and it all adds up to a really, really good sleep system. I don't want to sound repetitive standing here and telling you how great this bag is. I haven't used them all. I can't say it's the best bag on the market, but I will confidently say that I have seen the most positive feedback from this sleeping bag than anything else. And furthermore, I think for the price, you're going to have a really hard time beating this one.